Hey guys, Justin here with AmericanMuscle.com with my topical overview of the Ford Performance Hot Rod Camshafts available for all 2005 to 2010 3-valve GT Mustangs. Now, the Hot Rod Cam should appeal to just about any 3-valve owner out there who is looking for a cam that will give some serious chop or lope at idle, one that will make some decent mid to top end power, and unlike other big idle aftermarket cams, a set here that will not require any extras when it comes to your valve train, such as springs or cam phase limiters. Now, first and foremost here, guys, the big appeal with these cams from Ford Performance is that iconic muscle car lopey idle, hence the Hot Rod name. Now, they will also offer some additional power benefits, but not quite as much as other cam options currently available here on the site. Now, the Hot Rod cams do get that super aggressive idle by using a bunch of duration over the factory camshafts, allowing for that big chop at idle while also increasing mid-range power at the same time. Now, speaking of duration, the Hot Rod cams will feature a duration at 50 thousandths of 221 degrees on the intake side, 240 degrees for the exhaust side. Now compare that to the factory camshafts with the duration at 50 of 175 degrees for the intake side, 193 degrees for the exhaust side. And once you compare those numbers, it becomes pretty easy to see where and why you are getting that big chop at idle, because this is obviously a pretty big increase over stock. Now, in addition to the duration, you are also getting 1 millimeter of additional lift here out of the Hot Rod cams from Ford Performance, which isn't a ton at the end of the day, but the small amount of additional lift will add to the overall peak power gains, especially in that mid to upper RPM range. Now, when you start getting into things like more lift, that's when the power gains will really increase, but at that point, you do need the aftermarket valve springs and the limiter kits. Those things all become essential, ultimately adding to the final cost along with the install difficulty. And that is one of the nice things here about the Hot Rod cams from Ford Performance. Essentially, you can just drop them in and go without the need for additional valve springs or phaser limiter kits and still get that awesome idle along with some pretty decent power gains. Now, you will need a tune along with new cam bolts, but really that's it when it comes to required upgrades, and that's going to be pretty standard whenever swapping cams in your 3-valve. Let's talk a little bit more about the power gains here, because I'm sure that's one of the big expectations when going with a set of cams like this, outside of that nasty idle, of course. And this is going to be one of those cases, guys, where the more mods you have, the bigger the gains you will expect here when using these particular cams. Now, things like long tube headers are certainly going to be valuable here, but going even further, Ford Performance intake manifolds, ported heads, stuff like that is going to yield even larger results. Now, in addition to the usual bolt-ons, including things like intakes, mid pipes, exhaust, things like that, if you got basically the entire kitchen sink naturally aspirated, you're looking probably 20-30 wheel horsepower here, guys, with some of these added bolt-ons, and even more if you really start diving into some of the more, I guess, elaborate modifications. So power is there to be had. It just depends on A, your tuning, and B, what kind of modifications you plan on running these with. But the more the merrier, right? Especially the mods that help your 3-valve breathe. The intake manifold, the long tube headers, things like that will really be crucial in making the most out of these cams. Now, the Hot Rod cams from Ford Performance, they will be one of your more expensive options on the site, coming in around that low $900 mark. But again, one thing to consider here, guys, is that similar options from Comp Cams, for instance, the Mother Thumpers there, they do require things like the limiter kits that we talked about earlier, which combined with the cams themselves, ultimately do bring the price above the Ford Performance hot rods that we have here today. So in the long run, the Hot Rod cams will ultimately cost less when it comes to getting them up and running for the first time on the 3-valve. If you go with something else that might be a little cheaper initially, once you start adding all of those extras, well then, again, it really just comes down to what you're willing to spend and what kind of work you're willing to do to get the cams in place. Now, moving into the install, obviously we're not giving you a step-by-step here on this one. Sorry about that, but this is gonna be a full 3 out of 3 wrenches on the old difficulty meter here, and you know, probably at least a full day to get everything in place from start to finish. Obviously, you have to dive into the engine pretty good here, guys. So if you're not comfortable with doing this kind of work, certainly going to want to have your local speed shop help you out with this install. Now, if you do plan on tackling this one yourself, just make sure you set aside again that full day to be on the safe side, guys, and make sure you have a decent set of tools to help you with the install, including that wedge tool, of course, to help you hold the timing chain in place. Now, we do actually have some pretty detailed instructions here or write-ups on the product page. If you haven't checked those out already, feel free to do so. It's a great way to get a better idea of what is involved to get everything in place here and just see if you're up to the job or not. But wrapping things up here, guys, again, the Ford Performance Hot Rod Cams are one of the most popular here at AmericanMuscle.com for the 3-valve Mustangs. Hundreds of 4- and 5-star reviews, and really it's easy to see why. Now, the hot rods do live up to that name with an absolutely nasty idle that will make even some pushrod guys jealous, while still making some pretty solid power gains overall when paired with supporting modifications. Be sure to check out a set for your 3-valve Mustang right here at AmericanMuscle.com.